Welcome to the 78th reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. The Wedding Feast. Early in the new year of 1977, as Brian lingered by the back door on his way out to work, he casually said with a smile, "Oh, by the way, I have a New Year's present for you. I've decided to accept the Lord back into my life." Such a shock. No smile on my face as I replied, "You better not be joking. Never joke with me about that." "I'm not joking. I mean it," he said seriously, and left. I hardly knew what to make of it until he came home and explained everything. For all of the last year, he'd been engaged in an intellectual battle in a spiritual sense, and all the Eastern meditation he practiced hadn't given him the peace he so fervently desired. He'd stared into nothingness, thinking, "To whom am I meditating?" In the end, he decided to give in and trust the Christian God again, the God of his youth. He didn't understand it all, but wanted to give it a try. He claimed to be impressed that I hadn't tried to pressure him into the faith and never showed annoyance when he ridiculed it. "You can thank the pastor for that. He trained me well," I remarked with a smile. I kept waiting for him to drop it all and go back to whatever he'd been into, but it didn't happen. He bought himself a new Bible and entered church life with enthusiasm. He joined the church choir with me for a short while. We ended up teaching children's church together and attending Bible studies on Sunday mornings before the service started. I taught crafts to the girls in their club called Girls Meeting God, a Christian version of brownies, and was invited to be craft director at a junior high summer camp in Red Deer. I'd never done it before, but another lady said she'd help me, so I agreed. Karen and Gary were allowed to join me, and we were given our own small cabin to live in for the week. What a thrill to enter Pioneer Ranch Camp through the rustic sign archway made from tree branches. I'd never been to camp before, not that sort of camp. The adventurous child in me rushed forward to embrace the experience. The first night there, a panic attack swept over me. I shook uncontrollably in the bunk bed I shared with 7-year-old Karen, but she managed to sleep through the tremors. The following nights were without incident as I acclimatized to the environment. The three of us had an enjoyable week. The boys and girls I taught were wonderful, and I found it so rewarding. Camp life so basic and unfettered. Once back home, the panic attacks gained momentum. My doctor put me on a low dose of Valium. Shame settled on me. A Christian was supposed to lead a victorious life, whatever that meant. I told a new church friend that I took Valium, and she treated me with disdain. If my mood was upbeat, she openly proclaimed to everybody present, "Jenny's feeling good today. You can tell she's taken her pills." I wanted the ground to swallow me up. I didn't need a friend who reveled in my weaknesses. Multiple hang-ups, good days and bad days. A negative comment from someone and painful doubts set in, triggering off the hiccup effect in my brain, or melancholy. If I read my old diaries, I plunged into depression as painful memories came back to haunt me. A lot of unfinished business dwelt back there. Brian took me to a student university event where I heard of the use of hypnotherapy in dealing with fears and anxieties. I shared my interest in it with our associate pastor. He wasn't against it, as his wife found it helped during childbirth. Too embarrassed to approach Brian, I asked my new friend if she would drive me to an appointment I made with a hypnotherapist. She agreed, but believed a Christian shouldn't rely on anybody but God. I obviously didn't have full membership of whatever Christian club she belonged to. The day of the appointment found me in a muddled state, with negative thoughts coursing through my brain like a group of noisy motorcycles on an otherwise quiet country road. Non-stop intrusion. I'd lost my sense of reality, all on account of an incident at a garage sale where a neighbor and I both showed interest in an item on the crowded table. I'd half held it in my hand and she'd snatched it from me. Angry at the time, the more I replayed it, the more guilt I felt. The inevitable pattern of repetitive rituals to rid myself of the dread and guilt of perhaps committing the biblical unforgivable sin, something so terrible it can never be put right, took over. And my head pounded under the pressure. Inside the clinic, the hypnotherapist told me to sit in a chair and close my eyes. He instructed me to imagine myself in an elevator as he counted me down the floors, starting from the 20th, down to 5, and then he stopped. He asked me some questions, and strangely, I heard myself speaking in a little girl's voice. "I can't do my sums," I said. As I mouthed those words, I realized I hadn't used the word sums since early childhood. After I came out of the trance, the therapist asked me what the word sums meant, and I said it was the name for early arithmetic in elementary school. Not being able to do arithmetic in school had affected my whole childhood and early adulthood with its persistence, robbing me of the freedom to pursue jobs of interest and affecting my self-esteem. The session ended there. I didn't learn anything new about my problems, but did discover hypnotherapy to be credible. You could be taken into the past and rediscover past events. Even your voice sounded the way it did at the time of the incident recalled. Your past still existed in the present, and so could affect you in the now. The session gave me some temporary, much-needed relief from the troubling thoughts I went into it with. The therapist gave me a tape with which to practice self-hypnosis at home, but I found it so difficult I fell asleep while listening to it. Hypnotherapy might have done me some good if I'd gone back for more sessions, but I didn't want to be beholden to the friend who thought me so weird and weak. In spring of 1978, I went again to Pioneer Ranch Camp, this time with Brian and the children, for a family weekend retreat. There I heard a powerful talk on Matthew 22, verses 1 to 14, one of the parables Jesus loved to tell his disciples, the one about the man who refused to wear the beautiful wedding clothes handed out at the feast laid on for street people. He wore his rags instead, because he didn't consider himself worthy of anything else. I'd heard this story before, but never with as much impact. Without a doubt, I mirrored the man in the story. I too had been invited to the feast of God's love, but still clung on to my old fearful ways, too afraid to believe my worth. Until I threw off the old, worn-out, guilt-ridden garments of my past and put on new clothes of freedom, I could not call myself a victorious Christian by anyone's standards. I wanted to change and be free, but I didn't know how to begin. Someday, somehow, I would have to, or I'd always be play acting. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.